All right, so I'm going to take you through what I do in my first practice. This is really to set everything up for the year, evaluate the players on the team, get to know the players on the team, and really start to coach them on the fundamentals. So the first section, first thing I would do right after all of your players start to show up is really introduce yourself. And in most cases, you're probably going to have throwing and catching going on while everyone starts to show up. But what you might have is handing out things from the league. It could be your uniforms or flags or anything else you need to do. But as soon as everyone's there, I would start with introductions. So start to learn the players' names, start to learn a little bit about them, introduce yourself, and then start to talk about the expectations that you have for the year. I would also ask them some questions in terms of, what their goals are, what they would like to do this year, what does success look like? After that, I would start to bring in your standard warm up. So, what I mean by your standard warm up is I use the same type of warm up every practice as well as every game. This really makes it quick for everyone. They know what they need to do, and everyone can get warmed up and ready to go. After that, the next section that I do is putting in some sort of agility warm up. So, in the agility warm up, what you're looking for is who can run, who can cut, what kind of ability they have going through a whole bunch of different scenarios and kind of game scenarios. So, what you're first going to notice is in this section, there's actually a sprint, and it's not a straight line sprint, it's on an angle, it's around a curve. So, most of football isn't actually played in straight lines, and so make sure you're practicing those things. Next section is in between some pylons, and so these cones are set up in a zigzag. I want them touching those pylons. I want to see who can bend, who can dip, those kinds of things, and their agility as they go through them, as well as speed. Next section is 2-foot hops. And so this is really just who can create that force, generate that force, and likely we'll show you who has the ability to kind of go up and over and around. And so I like that just from a speed and power side of things. And then last, what you're going to see is a section for sprint. So just all out speed. I would get the team to go through this a couple of different times. Your coaches can take a look and evaluate who you have as athletes. After that section, I would, now that the blood's pumping and everyone's ready to go, I would do a little bit of throw and catch. I like to do throw and catch even just for 5 minutes every practice. Get as many reps as you can with your team actually catching the ball. In flag, it is critically important that everyone is able to catch the ball. So at a youth level, making sure everyone's got that, show them the right way to catch the ball, away from the body into the hands, but then also how do you throw? How do you throw appropriately? Even if they're not the quarterback, there are plays potentially on your team where you're going to have another person that is going to throw the ball as a second quarterback. From there, we're going to break it into stations. I want to make sure that there are the fewest amount of people standing in line as possible, as well as getting multiple things done at the same time. You split your team up into multiple groups. And in this case, we're going to have a running back that is going to run around a pylon, getting into a one-on-one scenario with a defender who is going at it from a different direction. You're going to have the pylons about 5 yards apart, and it's about 10 yards in length. And they're going to go into one-on-one scenario. You're going to coach things like flag pulling in terms of going from it right at the hips, but also just, the right foundational components for flag pulling, especially if someone's never done it before. And then for the running back, how do you actually avoid the tackle? So things like hip flips, spins, dips, whatever you need to do. Early on in the season for younger teams, it's probably just a hip flip or a spin, just showing them one thing that they can do to try and avoid the tackle. At the same time, I would have the other half of the team working through just rusher drills. So seeing who knows how to rush, teaching them how to rush, how to break down, how to pull flags. In this example, I would have probably a coach at this point with flags on, having the rusher actually rush, standing still. After they've got a couple reps in, having the quarterback or coach move around a little bit to get a sense of who understands how to rush, who can go with speed, how do you break down. The next set of stations is really 2 parts. So one will be a throwing kind of receiving station where you're going to have someone running a route. Now, it doesn't really matter what route that you're running. In this case, you're going to see that it is an in route. we've got the pylons set up in a way that it shows them exactly what the route should look like. And so this is a great way, especially for newer or younger athletes, to see exactly what you're expecting of them. They're going to catch somewhere here in the middle of where the pylons are. They're going to make a quick cut and then turn upfield, where you're going to have either one or two defenders there to pull flags. Again, they're going to try and evade at the end. This is where you're going to be able to evaluate who can actually catch, how do they catch and run, are they able to string together then an evasion along with it. So it's a great drill. We use this in a lot of practices just with different routes, so they can try this out, and it's a great way to get everyone involved. At the same time, I would actually pull away some of those quarterbacks or potential quarterbacks that you might have on your team and do a quarterback specific drill where you're evaluating your quarterbacks. And so if you've got some sort of quarterback throwing net, that's great, because a quarterback then, or a coach, can stand with the quarterbacks and look at things like their mechanics and then walk them through how to throw appropriately, or help them with, whipping their hip or their arm motion. Really just trying to get a sense of who might be able to be your quarterbacks for the year, because it's important to get that out of the way early so that in your next set of practices, they're the ones that are actually getting reps. After that, I would do some sort of one-on-one drills where you can start to see the competition side of things. In this case, you're going to have one receiver against one defender. You'd give them a limited set of routes that they could actually run. In this case, we typically would show them 2 to 4 routes, so things like a hook, an in, an out, or a go route, and get the defender, who in this case would be playing zone around that middle pylon. They would have to play defense against this receiver. And so a really great way to find kind of defense IQ, understanding who can kind of actually defend the ball. And then lastly, some sort of mini game. In this case, we would be using Ultimate Football. So Ultimate Football is very much like Ultimate Frisbee, where the ball carrier is the only person that can't be moving or can't run. They've got to find someone else on their team to throw it to. Players need to get open. They need to find space. And this is really a good way to understand who on the team really gets the concepts of football, getting open, getting in space, turning around and making a play very quickly, throwing it to someone else on their team. It's also a fun one for a little bit of competition. But with all of these different drills, you should be able to get a pretty good sense of where you're at from an athlete perspective, for positions and everything else you need to get your next practice set up, so you can actually start running through what plays you have and really more for the season. Last but not least is the practice recap. What I'd be looking for is, how do you start to understand what went on in either the practice or the game? And so asking your team a few questions. Things like, what did we do well and what can we improve on? So things like that will get your athletes starting to think about how they did and maybe what they need to do differently next time.